I want to be president to make government work for you, not the other way around. I want to make government keeps its promises to you.
He also went on to say that government has a role and that government in his life was there when he didn't have much of a safety net and they were living basically hand to mouth. So while Lindsey Graham's just joined the Republican field for president, he actually praised, although wanting to limit, but he praised and said there's a definite need when it comes to government. And it certainly breaks ranks, let's say, with a lot of the Republican field and what we heard that government is the enemy. Rand Paul, as we saw what he did with the Patriot Act and talked about limits to government in terms of oversight and freedoms, put him in certainly conflict with the Republican Party. Rubio to a certain degree with immigration, granted he flip-flops. Do you think, big picture, Republicans breaking from script will cause either more chaos in the primaries where, you know, it'll be a circular firing squad, or will it be good for the party in that they're not just broadening message but also tent?
I really think it's good for the party. I think it's the kind of debates that one should have, no matter how you end up being on one side or the other. I think it's very good for the party. The question is, of course, is it going to be good for the candidate ultimately who has to face the Democrat? And that question really becomes one of how does everybody react in the end to the arguments made in which they disagree by the other contenders? That's really what's going to be interesting, because I think all these arguments have a place in the public debate. But I think it's positive because Republicans are too often seen as, you know, the country club, you know, white shirts. They don't disagree. Debate where
they said, how many of you feel? And they all threw up their hands, you know, and then it was just a fight to see how many departments they'd all shut down the administration. If it nothing else, for guys like us, this makes it interesting when you hear what you did from not only a Lindsey Graham, but some of the rest. Okay. This next one is for you, Dom. Bob Schieffer, he signed off as host of Face the Nation on Sunday, and in his farewell tour, he gave an interview to Fox News, and they had an interesting question, and he had an interesting response about Barack Obama going back to 2008.
Isn't it the job of journalists to be skeptical even of the young phenom?
Yeah, it is. It is, and I don't know, maybe we were not skeptical enough.
Do you think history will look back and say that there was a love affair for all different kinds of reasons, and Barack Obama got more of a pass, not from the radical right here who never thought he was a citizen and thought he was Muslim and all the rest, but from the media, a mainstream media, who wanted to be on the right side of history maybe a little too much and gave him a pass? And do you think they won't make that mistake or won't do that with anyone else going forward for the near future?
Let's face it, President Obama was at the right place at the right time. Right place at the right time. And as far as the criticism of how he was covered, we know that Hillary Clinton and certainly Bill Clinton screamed bloody murder that Obama was able to walk through the primary. And so, in my opinion, there should have been some more skepticism about this first-term senator from Illinois. Yeah, he was smart. He's smart.
And it'll be harder, you think, for somebody to come out of the traditional thing without being tougher questions.
What worked for him was that he didn't have a record. That's what worked. That timing is everything in politics, as you know. And because he did not have a record, he was almost able, I'm not going to say walk, because as the first black president, he would tell you it was far from a cakewalk, but he was almost able to walk to the nomination and not have some other, he had Reverend Wright and so on, but not have some other serious questions come up.
Andrew, to the aforementioned Hillary Clinton, and some poll numbers that either they expected or they can't be happy about, but either way, they're not doing cartwheels. Majority of people, and this is a new poll out, just that were asked, say that she is dishonest and untrustworthy, and that number's been trending up. Her favorability rating is also falling, just now at 45%. I give the disclaimer that against the entire Republican field and certainly the Democratic field, she still wins and wins going away. Do you think in Hillary world, when they closed the door, they expected the numbers to be where they are, or did they say, we got to figure out a different kind of messaging here because we're starting to lose the inevitability narrative?
I'm sure they expected, at the beginning of the campaign, they probably drew a graph or could have drawn a graph saying, well, her favorability is going to be here and it's going to end here and then eventually it's going to arc back up. as we go through the primary process. First of all, she's not doing a whole lot of talking. Second of all, there's 37 Republicans who are running for president, and they're all bashing Hillary Clinton in the process. So you're getting those reminders, and you're getting news reports about Hillary Clinton. There's not a whole lot of positive news to outweigh the onslaught of the negatives. Plus, let's not forget that everybody knows this woman, and maybe they had forgotten in recent years because she was Secretary of State, and then she'd been out of the news cycle.
Wouldn't that mitigate, though, Andrew, that if everybody already knew her and everybody already had a formulated opinion about her, God knows, right, that the number shouldn't have dipped, or the number shouldn't have dipped as much?
Yeah, but everybody's getting reminders of it, whether it's the email thing or Trey Gowdy inviting her back for another Benghazi conversation, or 17 of the Republican candidates saying X, Y, and Z about her. So people are getting reminded of what they may have forgotten or might not just have had on the top of their head or the tip of their tongue about Hillary Clinton. So I think this is exactly where they expected she was going to be.
Let me bring in the rest and ask a broader question, which is, as people, and typically in the summer, especially the year out, things gear down a little bit in terms of at least the media attention to the race. What do you think each of you guys, and I'll start with you, Scott, will be a narrative people should keep an eye on as it relates to the race? Whether it be from her, the Republican side, any narrative that you think you kind of first guess on.
I think the issue that will dominate, I think, ultimately is not Benghazi. It will be ISIS and foreign policy. What do you do with China?
More than the economy, huh?
Because I think the economy is always something, jobs are always something, but when it comes to distinguishing the various candidates, foreign policy, they differ. They're all over the place. That question to Bush, would you do Iraq again?
Yeah.
I mean, that hobbled him. It really did, his response. So I think foreign policy will start to distinguish how these folks work out. Russia, China, Yemen, Libya, Iraq. I mean, it is the ongoing, Iran, ongoing concerns, I think, that will separate them.
First guess, Andrew, tell me what we're going to be talking about before the end of summer.
Well, I think it's whether Republican candidates take the bait on social issues and sort of play into Democrats' hands. I think the economy and foreign policy are always going to be standard issues, but they're not going to be as big this cycle, I don't think. So I think it's going to be domestic social issues. I also think it's going to be the race to get into the top 10. So you're going to see a lot of maneuvering. I mean, the Patakis and the Lindsey Grahams and the Carly Fiorinas of the world are going to have to light their hair on fire to try to get into the top 10 so they can be in the first tier of these debates.
Tom?
I think the issue is going to be going into the summer and throughout this campaign, whether or not Hillary Clinton is invincible. Does her poll numbers go down? Because that's going to be the narrative. With the Obama election, once he moved up, there was no looking back. Hillary came close in terms of delegate count, but the clock ran out, and it was inevitable that he was going to be elected president. So the question will be: is she inevitable, or might there be a chink in her armor, if you will?
And I think we're going to find out in the next few months the relationship a little bit between this president and the woman that would succeed him, and how she starts to either separate or start to go towards the president, especially if those numbers come down. Now, we spent a lot of time, unfortunately, on this show dealing with the realities of politicians getting in trouble, questionable motives for politicians, and it's become sport to be harsh on politicians. But I wanted to just take a few moments to talk about somebody who was a definition, I think, in every way of what a public servant is. I don't care your politics, Republican or Democrat. I'm talking about Beau Biden. Now, the vice president's son, he died Saturday from brain cancer. Now, this is just the latest tragedy, as many of you know, to hit the Bidens. Biden, he was sworn into the Senate, the father that is, just 18 days after his first wife and one-year-old daughter were killed in a car crash. The swearing-in happened at the hospital bed where 3-year-old Beau and his 2-year-old brother Hunter were being treated as they were in the car on that same tragic accident. Beau, he went on to serve in the Delaware Army National Guard in 2003. Then he served in Iraq. He then became Attorney General of Delaware for not 1 but 2 terms and declined to run for a 3rd term, saying he wanted to run for governor in 2016. Unfortunately, he never got the chance, and he leaves behind a wife and 2 children, and he is only 46 years of age. So just remember, everybody, whenever we all take shots at politicians, a lot of them give a lot to a lot of folks here and leave a lot of sacrifice behind. We'll be right back.